I'm sitting here in a pool of nostalgia. 40 minutes now before the top of the hour, that's 1 o'clock. And that was the last record that I played on February the 8th on Radio City on those Shivering Sands Towers way back in 1967. And actually on the Shivering Sands Towers is where I met a friend of mine who's been a friend for probably more years than we both care to remember, by the name of Keith Skues, who's going to be on the airways just after the 1 o'clock news bulletin. Keith, always a pleasure to see you, my friend. You must be exhausted. You were on the radio till all hours this morning and you're back here again today.
Well, it's rough sleeping in the car, you know how it is.
Oh, no.
No, it's great to be back. Great to see you again.
And nice to see you. And you and I, I've just mentioned Radio City, of course. You and I first met on Radio City when we were going to do some kind of merger between Radio London and Radio City. And you came out to look at Radio City with Duncan Johnson, another pirate disc jockey friend of ours. And I remember, you're being hoisted 90 feet above sea level. And you weren't impressed with Radio City, were you?
I thought it was a dump. I mean, forgive me for saying it. I mean,
what a dump.
Radio Caroline was rough, but where you worked, gosh, I couldn't believe anybody'd live in those conditions.
I know, it was pretty rough, but I always think back to those days and the snippets of Radio City that our Anorak friends have sent us, Keith, and they send them all the time, for which we're both grateful, is that the end product didn't sound too bad.
Oh, no.
So what the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve, right? I mean, it sounded okay, but people think that working on pirate radio as a disc jockey was very glamorous, which in a way it was, but it was darn dangerous out there, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. I mean, we were fighting for our lives. When you crossed, I mean, you were saying on television the other night when I saw you, the danger from crossing from the small tender that used to take us out from the port of Harwich or Felixstowe or wherever, going to the Mi Amigo, because you were on the ships.
Yeah.
Later on Radio Caroline South, jumping from the tender to aboard the Mi Amigo. It's easy on television trying to explain one goes up, one goes down, and if you misfired, you're dead.
You're dead because you would possibly be crushed between the two ships banging up against each other with the great big rubber tires, I seem to remember. And even to this day, I can't swim, so we were dicing with death, especially in rough weather. But being hoisted on that pallet up to Radio City, I was terrified. It was 90 feet high.
I was going to say yours was a double whammy, because when you were on Radio City, it wasn't just one fort, was it? There were a number of forts.
Yeah.
And the living accommodation was separate from the studios. Yeah. And you had to walk across a gangplank,
which was man-made. I mean, the original ones, which were made, of course, by the army guys, because 400 soldiers were stationed on those towers during the war, on both the Red Sands forts and the Shivering Sands forts. But I remember they built this rope type of catwalk across from one tower to the other. When I closed down Radio City, it was just me, so I would switch off the transmitter, switch off the generator. What I didn't know is that my mates, one of them may have been Andy Archer, who would wait until I got halfway across and then start to shake the darn thing, which scared the living daylights out of me, and they did it on purpose. But we were much younger men. The world was our oyster, Keith, and it still is.
And it was very tasty.
It was.
Both the oyster and the chop.
So, in a nutshell, it's, the official birthday of Radio Caroline first being heard was March the 28th, which we've just gone past, and that was well celebrated. I'm delighted that David Clayton has organised this with all his colleagues for people like you and I to come back and talk to young people who don't know what pirate radio was all about. They certainly will know by 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock tonight. Any thoughts on today? Because this actually was the Easter weekend back 50 years ago in 64 that it all started.
Yes, well, we talked about double whammies. It's a double whammy also because a number was celebrated on the 28th of March, and there was a huge reception in Amsterdam, which I attended, as did quite a number of the DJs. Andy was over there, Ray Clark was over there. That was terrific. About 500, between 500 and 800 people, depending on the time of day, turned up for that, including listeners as well. So we celebrated that there and then. Television and radio covered it, of course, at that period of time. Easter has come a month later, so we're celebrating it again, and congratulations.
Which is a double whammy, yeah.
To David Clayton for sticking his neck out and saying, are we going to be able to afford Tom Edwards? Andy's put his fee up, I'm sure. No, actually getting us all together around a table, or tables, to do 12 hours or 11 hours, is it?
Yeah.
11 hours?
Yeah.
And then we're having a documentary.
A documentary at
full
6 o'clock, yeah.
So absolutely fantastic, and it's great to live and play some of those records, which in some cases I haven't heard for years and years and years.
I know. Anyway, always a pleasure, Keith. And Keith Skues, excuse me. I mean, you are the walking encyclopedia of pirate radio. I mean, where do you store all this stuff? You've written this great big volume, which has been revised. You brought out another edition. I mean, however did you approach that in the first place?
With difficulty.
Yeah.
It took me 30 odd years to do it.
But if you want to know anything about pirate radio, Keith's book is the one to get.
Well,
And I believe you're doing some kind of speech later on this week. So my spies told me here in the forum in Norwich.
Carefully rehearsed and well written ad libs, which I really must get those written. Yes, that's Wednesday, 1 o'clock here in the forum in the Fusion.
Yeah.
So I've got some slides to show.
Yeah.
I think they call it PowerPoint. Some technical. Oh, you'd like to mention that?
Yes.
Other film things available as well. So I'm doing that'll take about 40 minutes, I suppose, and any questions and answers people may have.
Okay, Keith, always a pleasure. You're on the air between 1 and 4 o'clock this afternoon. And also, we'll be meeting up, of course, after you, will be Colin Berry.
Yes.
I have to tell you, folks, of course, that both Keith and I and Colin Berry, we worked for this this gentleman called Jimmy Kingsbury when we were at the BBC at Broadcasting House, wearing collars and ties.
Oh, yes, reading the news.
Reading the news,
National
the shipping
news.
forecast, and doing programmes as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those were the days.
So our friendship has been there for a long, long time, and I'm going to shake your hand. It's always a pleasure.
Once again.
Thank you, Keith. Nice to see you. My goodness, what we're going to do now? I have no idea. It's 7.5 minutes before 1 o'clock. Have a jingle or something? Yes.